and welcome back to another episode of Mona's Rants. I am your host, Mona Sheikh. Happy Monday. How is everyone? How was your weekend? What did you guys do? James said, Happy Monday, everyone. And then he said something about cave Ides Martis. Beware of the Ides of March. Did I say that's right? Is it Ides or Ides of March? I think it's Ides. Tim Windsor said, smack those thumbs, people. Let some love in for Mona. Thank you, Mona. Love your phone IMDb for the upcoming Rookie episode. Yay! I'm so excited about the Rookie episode. It's nice to see my face on IMDb for the first time in all the years I've been grinding. But enough about this. I have a wonderful guest today. She is married to a fantastic comedian friend, and I'm so happy to have her. She works in comedy. She works in comedy touring for CAA, and we're going to talk about the actual conversation about diversity that's taking place behind closed doors, or at least whatever information we can get from her. Here's my very amazing friend, Claire Armstrong.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
So nice to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Gosh, it's just it's hard to believe that it's been over a year since we, have all been able to do this in person. It's crazy.
I mean, does it feel so even odd to meet up with people and be like, oh my God, I haven't like touched your arm in like a year.
Yeah. And it's been like an incredibly long year. And also you look back and you think, wow, that's been a year. That's gone so quickly at the same time.
That's right. Claire, you work in comedy touring for CAA. Yeah. How is the touring coming along? Is touring getting booked?
We are very lucky because we work with smaller venues. We have been able to work at lower capacities throughout a lot of the pandemic. So rooms that would have been 300 people have been operating at like 80 people or 100 people. Uh-huh. So luckily, we've seen that continue through kind of most of the last year, but we are starting to see higher capacities. Rooms are opening back up at sort of 75% or 100% now.
Yeah.
We have been working with like a small pool of comics who have been happy to go on the road in the last year. So we're really looking forward to being able to kind of open this back up once everyone's vaccinated.
Yeah.
Starting to put all our clients back into circulation. Yeah. So it's not just the same kind of 10 or 15 people getting booked week in, week out.
Right. I mean, these rooms, are they mostly in like red states or these blue states? Like, what are we looking at?
Surprisingly, the red state rooms tend to be quicker to kind of bump up the capacities, but they are all really strict on COVID precautions and restrictions. So even the rooms that are back at full capacity, they're still like, you have to wear masks. They're still cleaning the rooms down with sanitizer in between shows. Mm-hmm. Comics are getting their own mics. Green rooms are private. So there's still a lot of additional work that's going on.
Yeah.
But we've had, varying degrees of like opens and closures, like on both coasts. We finally got the like the Washington State and Oregon and stuff opening back up, which is great.
Right.
California and New York are kind of the slower ones, but we're getting there. It's got to be safety first.
Right. I wonder also, I mean, we've noticed with the red states, they've been a lot more relaxed than the blue states when it comes to like look at Texas. They, opened the entire state up, no mask mandate. I mean, which is insane considering that if Governor Abbott would have just stayed put for another 4 weeks, we probably
imagine that, right?
Yeah, just imagine that. But and Florida everything is wide open, gyms are open, everything is open. Now they have this conversation that's happening that the Florida spring breakers, there's going to be a massive breakout. That's another spike they're talking about, which is of concern. So do you guys, like, when you book your tours for comedians, do you guys kind of try to shy away from places like that where you're like, man, they have pretty big breakouts and stuff, or they're going to have a spike, or no?
It's got to be up to the comic. We've been really, really lucky. Everyone's being kept safe. They're still being looked there. Like the comics themselves are being incredibly well looked after. So no one's coming anywhere near them. Anyone that does meet and greets, they've mostly been cancelled.
Yeah.
If a comic wants to work and the room is open, then we'll, figure out a way to do it safely. But it's, the flip side of that too is if there is like a breakout in a certain area, and a comic calls on a Tuesday and says, oh, you know what? No, then we'll cancel the week. And clubs have been really good about it, and we'll just reschedule them into the next one that makes sense.
Right. Which makes sense, right? I mean, are you guys now like kind of trying to push your comedians to be vaccinated before they show up to comedy venues? Is that a thing that's happening?
Yeah, I mean, we would love for them to be. We certainly can't mandate that they be vaccinated before work, but we're very I'm just trying to think of the right word, but yes, we're not pushing them, but we're certainly encouraging people, and we can help people, if they need help booking or figuring out when they're when they're eligible. And you would think for comics, if you're going to be on the road and that's how you make work and that's how you make your money, being vaccinated should hopefully bump you up the priority list at some point. So
right. I mean, Claire, I don't know if you read this. There was an article that came out about 2 weeks ago that talked about like all the artists in New York City, 2/3 have just lost all their income. 2/3.
Yeah.
Like there's you're talking about all of Broadway, all the comedy clubs, like people have they went back to their hometowns because they can't afford to live in the city. I mean, which is really sad.
This time last year when we were kind of closing everything down, we weren't sure how long COVID was going to last. So we kind of took from March till about April or May and thought, well, we were told 14 days to flatten the curve. Yeah. So we pushed all that stuff out, and then we got to kind of April or May and realized this was going to be something that was going to be set in for longer. So making all those calls to our clients who we love and just basically canceling their income for the year, like it was horrible.
Right.
We all have our own like pain and sort of traumatic experiences around COVID, but for me, these guys who rely on touring for work and us just being like, sorry, like we're taking away your ability to earn money for the foreseeable future. Those calls were just like horrendous to make.
Sure.
So it's really good to see things are picking back up again now.
Did you hear any comedian melting down on the phone?
No, everyone was pretty understanding about it. I think, especially at the beginning, we didn't quite know everything associated with COVID. We didn't know how serious it was. We didn't know how long the symptoms were going to last. So everyone was super, super cautious. Right. But we kept up a list of people who we kind of add people back into it month on month, and we'll reach out to everyone and be like, are you comfortable going back on the road? If you are, let's put you back into our list, and we'll let our buyers know.
Yeah.
We just have to make sure that we're doing the right thing by both our clients and our buyers too, because they also have people to keep safe.
That's right.
Staff, waitresses.
That's right.
Sound and lighting guys. It's been one big community. It's really brought the community together, actually.
I mean, Claire, when you think about like the bigger clubs, like your improvs, and I guess I would say improv is probably the biggest, right? And Laugh Factory has a few, but these smaller venues, the smaller comedy clubs, have you guys been seeing a lot of the smaller comedy clubs shut down because they can't sustain themselves?
We have lost a couple, which is sad. Some of the bigger clubs have also then eaten up some of the smaller clubs, so you'll see them reopen.
Right.
A different name this year.
Yeah.
But there have been a few of them that have, despite the PPP loans and, all the protections that were supposed to be put in place. Yeah. This has been 12 months, and it's hard to sustain a business when you can't run it.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it's just so heartbreaking. Like when I just think about like the small, I mean, there are so many small businesses that we will never hear about that they put all their life savings and everything in like running their mom and pop shops, and they're all gone. They've all disappeared. And I think smaller comedy venues are definitely a part of that. But I wanted to kind of switch gears and talk to you about, I don't know how much of a conversation is happening in the comedy touring world about diversity and representation. I am genuinely curious.
Yeah, this is something that is always ongoing, and it's so important. And I think I would say now more than ever it's important, but I think it's always been important, whether or not we've been putting the emphasis on it or not.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear stories about these little girls who are like watching Vice President Kamala Harris being inaugurated and saying, oh my goodness, there's someone who looks like me finally.
Sure.
Like, we need to be able to provide people that across all industries and across all mediums and across, like all across entertainment.
Yes.
I think the diversity conversation, it never goes away, but there's like a realization now that you don't have to necessarily book a comic because they're diverse. You book the comic because they happen to be a great comic and they happen to be diverse.
Right. I mean, diversity just for the sake of diversity.
Right.
I think that can be a little disastrous, right? And we see that sometimes. I don't know if you watched Tom and Jerry, the new movie that came out.
Yeah.
They try to do like a whole diversity thing in there, and I genuinely applaud their absolute good intention of trying to do that. But some of the diversity thing that they were trying to push, I was like, this doesn't even make sense. It's kind of cringy a little bit. Like, I'm just like, oh, okay, it doesn't even belong. Like, I don't know why you're doing this. But I understand that about the conversation about diversity. I mean, there are, first of all, I don't want to hear another comedy club say that they can't find women. I don't want to fucking hear it. There are plenty of female comics, including myself, that are out there busting their ass and trying to make stuff happen. But is that an emphasis that, the CAA comedy touring tries to put on, where they're just like, you know what, let's go and find more women, even more women of color to put in the touring? Or is it just kind of based on, hey, these are the kind of comics we're comfortable with. This is the kind of comics that we want to represent, and we're not really having that conversation about women and women of color.
I mean, every agent's different, and they all have, their own kind of individual mandates for who they want to represent. But at the end of the day, we want to represent people who love what they do, who are great at what they do,
yes,
and who want to go out and show that to the world. We're really lucky that we happen to have a really diverse roster of comics. We have great women, great comics of color, sexual orientation. Like we just work with these people because they're great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, has there been an increase of like more, I guess, diverse comics on your roster, or you guys have pretty much stuck with what you guys have had in the past?
I feel like there's probably a little bit of both. And the other thing we do too is, like, if we bring someone on as a touring client, we want to have them represented across the board. So maybe, one of us will say, look, he's a really great, comedian of color, and she's wonderful, and we need to have her on. And then we'll also partner with like the TV department and be like, how do you see her progressing her career through TV and film?
Sure.
So we have to, I don't really know how to put this into words.
Well, you can always write it out for me.
Yeah.
Sign language. We can.
I'll write an essay and we can come back to it.
I'll write a blog for you, Mona.
Yeah, I'll write you a blog post. We don't seek out, I don't think we necessarily have to seek out diversity specifically, because it is something that we're already welcome to, and we're already open to, and we're already working with.
Got it.
So,
Got it. I mean, now, this whole conversation about the Me Too movement, and I think how it kind of even bleeds into comedy, especially for women. I mean, look, I've toured, and it gets creepy. For women, it gets very creepy very quickly. For dudes,
Right.
not so much. They got their, they got their groupies, and they got girls who are like, oh my God, take me home. And we're like, get this weirdo from me. And I think it's so different. Have you guys ever had like your comics or like female comics you guys have booked, or just like, okay, don't book me in that place or that place because it's creepy over there?
Do you know, I nothing that I've come across personally, and
Yeah.
I would hate to say that it's never happened because I don't know. It potentially could have, but I haven't had any client come to me and say this place isn't good, or this club isn't good, or I don't want to tour with this person because they're not good.
Yeah.
But I am aware that it happens, and we
Right.
know, it's something that we think about. And if a particularly female client were to come back and say, hey, you know what, a manager at this club, or their host, or their condo was not in a safe spot or something like that,
Yeah.
they came to us with that, then we would of course address it.
Right. I mean, I think, Claire, I don't think this is a secret. I think in the comedy world there is a lot of sexual harassment that goes down in the comedy world, right? Especially as women, we experience that a lot. I mean, I can tell you that I've experienced this from incredibly established, like, movie star comedian level, right? Like,
the power trip thing.
Power trip, like cornering me, not letting me go home, following me to my car, not letting me back up my car out because they're just like, how can I get my hands on you? Right. So, I mean, if something like that happens with you guys, like, how do you guys handle something like that? What do you do? Like, what do you do? Like, if there's a female comic that's touring, and there's another male comic that's like sexually harassing them, like, what do you do? Do you just remove the male comic? Like, how do you guys handle something like that? That is such a tough thing.
Yeah, that is a really tough thing. And it's also because I haven't had to do it personally, I would hate to give you like a step-by-step of how that would happen. But I mean, it would escalate through CAA and then through the venue.
Right.
So the venue or the booker or whoever would be made aware of it.
Right.
I mean, I would imagine personally, I think if a say female comic was headlining and she said, hey, you know what, my features making me really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If there was a way we could switch, if that was on a Friday night, if there was a way we could switch them out for a Saturday night,
right,
to put someone else in, I wouldn't be hesitant to ask.
Right.
For something like that. But it would depend. I mean, it would. Yeah, because I haven't had to do it, I would just be hesitant to kind of give a sort of exact.
Right.
An exact path for dealing with it, but I mean, it's super serious, and it's something that needs to be addressed in this industry, in all entertainment, but in this industry 100%. Specifically.
100%. I mean, I feel like as female comics, we are always, at least, all the female comics, at least that I work with, we always have this kind of danger kind of lurking every time we go to shows, because we don't know what male comic is going to try to like approach us or hit on us, or there's a lot of times when you do shows and the host of the show is like, oh, I had a host one day when he introduced me on stage. He was like, her jeans is looking extra tight tonight.
Wow.
Give it up. I mean, I've talked about this on iHeartRadio. I've talked about this here, but Russell Peters.
Can you hear my dog barking?
Yeah.
Hey. They decided that they're going to play just like right in front of the phone.
All good.
Sorry. Yes, please.
No, all good. I've talked about this. I mean, Russell Peters, who's a very big comic, when he introduced me for the first time at the Comedy Store, he was hosting the show, and he said, the next comic I'm about to bring up on stage, I've been trying to fuck her ever since I met her. Right. And you like listen to something like that. I mean, I was like young at the time. I was like maybe like 5-6 years in, and you just get like intimidated. You're like, oh my god, this big comic, and they're making a comment about like wanting to have sex with me. Like, how do I respond to this?
Were you expected to just like brush it off and as though it didn't happen, or as though you weren't bothered by it?
That is correct. I was expected
Right.
to just be like, well, this is Russell Peters, so you should just take it in strides. But I feel like when it comes to women in comedy, there's like always this kind of weird lurking angle of like sexual harassment, sexuality, which is not something that male comics ever have to even think about or deal with.
Right.
Yeah. What are your kind of thoughts on like when what are your thoughts on this whole thing that, how much do you think the Me Too movement has helped the conversation in the comedy world, especially for female comics?
I would hope that female comics feel able, empowered to come forward.
Yeah.
I mean, I see the articles when they come out, and I know that it's not often addressed as it should be. You see women making claims who are then made as though they have brought it on themselves,
right,
or are exaggerating things. And I don't think that that's fair, especially when a lot of women have, some sort of evidence of this. There's, text messages keep, Snapchats keep, emails keep,
That's right.
It needs to be eliminated, and women need to know that they can report it without
repercussions.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think that more work needs to be done here.
Yeah.
Whether it's through, agencies will play a big part. There are a lot of comics who are not represented, who need to have a voice in this too. Agencies, clubs, theaters, venues, whatever venues, and just the comedy community in general.
Right.
Don't behave in a way that if someone calls you out, if you're going to be embarrassed by your behavior, then you shouldn't be doing it.
Right. I would say that Chris D'Elia is like a pretty prime example. He literally lost his career during the pandemic. Yeah. Right. He got really, even that video he recently put out about saying that he's been, it's something that happened and he's apologetic about it. And I'm sorry I was banging all these chicks. And it was just like, oh, that's nice. But he's apologizing to try to get his career back. Somebody like Chris. By the way, did you guys rep Chris D'Elia or no? You guys didn't rep Chris D'Elia. Somebody like Chris D'Elia, even somebody like Louis C.K., like really big comics. Somebody was asking me. They were saying, when is the time to forgive them? When is the time that they can forgive and then you move on, Claire?
Yeah.
When is the time? I don't know that time.
I don't know the answer to that. And I think that part of it is probably, well, do the women forgive you? Because if they're able to forgive you, then it's easier for me to forgive you. Do believe in second chances. I do believe people make mistakes and do ridiculous things. But a lot of these stories are not one-offs.
Oh, they're multiple. There are multiple cases. Yeah.
They happen all the time.
Right.
Did they stop because they realized their behavior was shitty, or because they got caught? Well, they got caught in most cases.
That's right.
I think it's personal, I guess, as to whether you decide you're going to forgive someone and give them a second chance. When it comes to people's careers, I guess it's when the audience forgives them and will go back out and see shows. Right.
In Louis' case, when Louis got called out by Vanity Fair, when not by Vanity Fair, when that whole thing came out that he took his ginger dick out and he was masturbating with it. When what's a horrifying thought. But when he did that, a year before that, he was being interviewed by Vanity Fair, and Vanity Fair asked him, they're like, look, there was all this, there's a lot of conversation happening about you like harassing women and doing all that. And he goes, I don't pay attention to stuff like that. He said, right? Yeah. And then even Roseanne Barr, which, like an unlikely hero that you would never think of, Roseanne Barr tweeted about him and said, Louis, what happens in the dark will come to light. And it did a year later, right?
Yep.
The Me Too movement and all that. And that Louis was trying to save his career and everything. I mean, I mean, Clay, you know what I'm trying to understand is that when you have somebody like big comics, right? When you're making millions of dollars, how do you, I mean, how do you stop somebody like that? Or how do you say, hey, you're not going to make those millions of dollars anymore? You know what I'm saying? And I'm not going to forgive you for a very long time because I don't know I don't know what the time frame is,
I mean, the standard procedure for most of these guys has been that they've just lost their representation, because at the end of the day, agencies, managers, they don't want to be associated with that kind of behavior. And I think, I mean, it sounds like a lot for someone like Louis C.K. to lose his agency and his manager, his publicist, like all in one day.
Sure.
But why should we put our name behind someone who's going to behave like that?
Right.
Why would I want to spend my time working for someone who's whipped his ginger dick out and masturbated in front of women before? Like, I don't want to spend my time. There are plenty of other really good comics I can spend my time on and grow them into someone who can sell tickets like Louis C.K. and keep their dick in their pants. So why not do that?
Or just not have a penis, period, just
exactly. Perfect. And we do need more women at the top of this game, because there are just not enough.
We can have a ginger vag in front of a ginger dick, we
just
can
keep it, as long as she keeps it in her pants, it's fine.
Just keep it in the pants. Stop whipping things out that nobody wants to see it,
If you're not invited to show it to anyone, please don't.
Right. And the thing is that I think a lot of maybe comics and even I think dudes in general don't, if we want to see your penis, we will ask you for it. We'll be like, show me your penis.
Yeah, sure.
Show me.
It's like unsolicited dick pics. Like if they're unsolicited for a reason, we don't care.
Claire, I don't know about you, but I mean, you're a married woman now, but as a single girl, like I've had like my share of dick pics that I've gotten. And when I get one, I just send a bigger one in return. And when the someone else's much bigger, it's like a Chris Rock show, bigger and blacker. That's what I try to do.
Well, there you go. And does it work? Does it usually, will they stop?
Works like a charm, because then they respond by, what the hell is that? And I'm like, I thought we were exchanging dick pics. Like,
there we go.
I'm a little confused by
I don't know who made the rule that people could just send dick pics.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I don't know anyone who appreciates them.
I think I have a feeling that concept came up during a fantasy football game, because just a bunch of dudes hanging out playing like fantasy games, and they're like, hey, we like imaginary, like, we would love to see women's bodies, and they're like, what if we showed women our bodies and then they would show us their bodies? And it's like,
maybe
that's not how none of this works.
No.
James,
please wait till you're asked.
Keep it in your pants. James has a question. He said, once all the clubs open, will established comics take precedence over newcomers? Will it even be harder to break into comedy?
That's a good question. There will always be certain clubs who have a built-in audience, so it's like a softer ticket, and there is much more space for the newcomer to come in, and they know that they'll have a good weekend regardless. It is harder now because everyone's lost so much money and so much business over the last year. They really do want people who can sell a good number of tickets in most clubs.
Right.
But I guess the opportunity for up and comers, like to open and to feature for people is still going to be there. That's not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. The opportunity to do like the one-nighters on a Wednesday night before a club week, which is usually like Thursday to Saturday, will still be there.
Right.
There's always going to be opportunity, and I hope once this shakes out and we realize which clubs we've lost, we'll also have new clubs open, which will expand the ability for comics in certain markets who maybe don't have a comedy club right now to have a local comedy club to go to.
Right.
Other flip side of that is that I know a lot of our peers, Mona, who are very hesitant to like get on YouTube, start a podcast, because they just see it as, well, all these young YouTubers are coming up and why should they get, work and I shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to stop seeing the YouTubes and the social medias and the podcasts as like a necessary evil. This is a way for up and coming comics to grow their own audience.
That's correct.
I can sell someone who has 100,000 YouTube followers all day long, because if I can show that they're going to sell tickets in a market, they're going to get booked.
Sure.
So use these things to your advantage.
That's right.
Connect with your audience.
That's right.
Build your fan base.
Yes.
And once you're at a point where you can sell tickets, no one's going to say no to you.
Right. I
unless you take your dick out.
Unless you pull your dick out. Yeah. Which is a no anywhere, right?
Right.
I mean, you don't want to do that. You don't even want to do that at Subway, right? Eat fresh. No. You don't want to do that.
Or outside of a Subway. Just please wear good.
Yeah, I mean, in an actual Subway or the sandwich place Subway, none of those places is a good place to do that. Yeah. Claire, you have been you've been a touring agent for how long now?
I've been working in the industry in various jobs for like 6 years now.
Okay.
Booking for on and off probably about 3.
Yeah.
From previous jobs into this job.
I mean, how different is it working? I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than CAA. So you're like at the peak of the mountain, right? Yeah. You come and work at CAA versus other agencies where you worked at. I mean, how different is it? Is it a lot more hardcore? Is it a lot more intense? Like, what is that?
It's very high volume. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I feel like comedy touring in most places is similar, right? There's a very small pool of buyers. There aren't a lot of people who book comedy clubs.
Yeah.
It's one of those like cliche things that truly is about relationships. Mm-hmm. The easier you are to work with, and the more you're able to help a buyer solve their problem and fill their need, the easier it is for you to get your job done.
Sure.
It is. Yeah, what we do, because how many comedy clubs are there operating every week, like 150 or 200 or something. So there's a lot of like club weeks to fill every week. So it's very, very high volume. Yeah. A lot of things, especially in the last year or last 9 months or so. Yeah. A lot of is happening very quickly. So a club will be like, hey, you know what? We just got approval and we are able to open next week. I need to fill a date next week. So that's something you kind of have to drop everything and fill that immediately. Sure. Or someone else is going to get their act in there.
Got it.
So it's also incredibly fun, incredibly rewarding, amazing to have the kind of access that we do.
Right.
I've met people that wouldn't respond to an email before. Having those 3 little letters behind your name helps.
100%.
But it also helps us, like the stronger the relationship you have with someone, the easier it now is for me to just pick up the phone and say, you know what? I know you haven't heard of this person. Please give them a night, give them a shot, and then I'll show you how great they are. And sure. That conversation becomes a lot easier too.
Right.
Which is the kind of like the best part.
Right. Claire, this whole episode is pretty much dedicated to and talked about, diversity and representation. I guess what I'm trying to understand, like, look, I don't work on that side, right? I'm on this side, I'm on the creative side and the creative side. But behind closed doors, in the decision maker places, like, whether it be at CAA agent's office or behind closed doors at an executive's office in a studio, what are the conversations? I mean, do you get to eavesdrop on these conversations? Like, what is the kind of sense? Like, are the executives getting flustered about, oh my God, are they scrambling? Or is it more, yes, let's be inclusive? Or are people getting frustrated and they're like, oh my God, enough with the diversity and representation conversation?
No, I think if there was an article that came out today in like Deadline or something like that, that was regarding African American representation in film.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something along the lines of that the opportunity cost of not supporting and investing in African American talent is costing the industry $10 billion a year.
Wow.
But it's not about like, we need diversity or, oh my God, like our quota's not full. It's about like, why wouldn't you? Because this country and comedy sells around the world is becoming more and more diverse every day.
That's right.
And everyone's taste's different. And everyone has this, like, all comics have a different audience, have a different style, have a different type of material. Right. So why wouldn't you want to serve everyone?
That's right.
Because the opportunity cost of not doing it is too big. So it's never like, it's never a drag. It's never like, oh, this like this again. It's like, why wouldn't we be representative of everyone?
Claire, I think when I think of CAA, of course, you think of like, oh my God, CAA, Chris Rock, or like massive talent like Dave Chappelle. I'm just like, oh wow, and then as a producer of a stand-up show and as also a comic, my audience and the people that I go after is a very niche audience, right?
Yeah.
But however, my rooms still get packed. I'll still pack my room out of 330 people.
Yeah,
I'll pack my room out of 250 people, right? So when you look at something like that, like, does CAA even consider those rooms, or does CAA even consider those kind of people to cater to, or that kind of community to cater to? Or do they focus more on, hey, these are the comedy venues that we work with and this is just what we're going to stick with?
So kind of both would be the answer to that. I've been to your shows before and they're great, but when we're doing live and we're back in venues, your shows tend to be in LA. Yeah. And I feel like, you've done one or two on the East Coast, I think, from memory, no?
I've done 2 shows in New York City.
Right.
I have a big show that I do in Orange County. Now I have a big show coming up in Bellflower. Last year, we were supposed to be the official show of LA Pride. So that, of course, went to shit. We were supposed to be at Soho House. We were supposed to be at the Cannabis Cafe.
Right.
So I lost all that. But we were also supposed to be in Chicago and Atlanta as well last year.
Yeah. So then that would be the conversation for a show like yours, which, yes, kind of serves a niche market, but it's a great show. Right. And that niche market deserves to be served as much as a mainstream comedy audience.
Sure.
So the conversation would be like, okay, how do we expand that?
Right.
How do we take that to like you said, to Chicago? How do we take that to Dallas? How do we take that to Louisville, Kentucky? Like, just because these states, you think of them as being predominantly white, they're not anymore. The cities are highly diverse.
That's correct.
Look at the election results. Dallas County went blue.
That's correct. That's correct.
Houston, Harris County, like the city of Houston, went blue. Like these urban hubs are extremely diverse.
That's
right. And if we're not looking to promote what you're doing and expand and grow what you're doing, then we're just leaving opportunity on the table.
That's right.
So why wouldn't we have this conversation?
And and that's interesting, right, Claire? So I always feel like, oh my God, someone like CAA would never even look at me because I have my niche market. So like under Minority Reports, I have my, Desi Girls, which is a slang way of South Asian, because you're married to a Desi man. Desi nights out, Desi Girls Night Out, Arab Girls Night Out, Armenian Girls Night Out, Persian. I mean, these are very niche markets, but we sell these rooms out because there is a need for it, right? Yeah. So I always, I was having a conversation with Samson Kalakar, who's a, Indian comedian based in the area.
Yeah, I've met Samson before.
Yeah, and I was talking to Samson about, and we were having the discussion of if ethnic comedy would ever become mainstream, right? Like our comedy, like, just the kind of nuanced conversations that we have growing up in the kind of culture we grew up in, and just kind of having our footing in both worlds, right?
Yeah.
Being of South Asian descent and then growing up in America, right? And like trying to juggle those two worlds and trying to blend in both. And I wonder, like, I want to hear your thoughts about how much do you think is ethnic comedy, is ethnic comedy ever gonna become mainstream, I guess?
I mean, it's a really good question. And I know you mentioned Russell before, and I kind of don't want to stick on him for too long, given the conversation that we had. But he's just a great example of someone who is of South Asian descent who has managed to cross over into the mainstream.
For sure.
And a lot of his comedy, and he's very American or Canadian, but he's very like
westernized.
Yeah. But a lot of his comedy is stories of his family, stories about growing up, his experiences. So I don't know if the conversation then becomes is like, how do we bring that your kind of shows mainstream? Do they have to be kind of westernized, or can we as like the Westerners just enjoy the stories that you guys are telling, maybe if we don't quite understand everything?
Sure. I mean, how would you understand something if you don't get exposed to it?
Right. But that's the other side of that too, is that, we should be exposed to your stories and your comedy and what's going on in the, with Desi girls and the Persian girls and stuff like that, because they're our brothers and our sisters and our colleagues and our doctors and our.
That's right.
That's
right. Like when I remember the first time I did Minority Reports in Orange County, we had a pretty big South Asian turnout, but we also had a pretty big white turnout, right? White people who were just like, I want to know this. I want to know these stories. Loved it, walked out, loved every second of it, right? So I think so much of it is also about exposure, right? So much of it also is about, I mean, what is if you really boil down the conversation about diversity and representation, it really boils down to opportunities. You're talking about diverse groups of people saying, hey, give us an opportunity. I promise you there is value in here. Right? There is value in ethnic comedy. There is value in stories that I tell, or my Arab, comics tell, or my Persian comics tell. There's value in it. But how will you see the value? But if you never give me the opportunity, look, I can pack a room out with 250 Persians, right? I can pack it out, but it would also be nice to have some some Black audience in there. It would be nice to have some white audience in there, but they don't know I exist because I'm never given that opportunity to take it to the next level. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So what would be the next opportunity for you in that case?
I mean, it would be something like, if you collaborate with a bigger organization or a bigger company, a bigger agency, and then they package it in a way where you're shown in a bigger venue, right? I can go to, the Dallas Fort Worth Irvine, or Improv there, and then be like, hey, we're having this massive night, catered to this community, but listen, other people can come also. If you are someone who wants to go to a comedy club, but this is specifically for this audience and they're going to come too, but of course other people are welcome too. You know what I'm saying?
Does it help you if you would, like, if you're doing like a Desi Girls night out and then maybe have an African American comic on, does that shift your audience? Will that then
draw? Not at all. No, the audience loves it. I mean, when I did my first time, I did my Desi Girls in Orange County, I had a lineup of Persian, Arab, South Asian, meaning Indian, Pakistani, Bangladesh. I had like a mix of just brown girls, right?
Yeah.
And everybody was like, I love the fact that I got to hear all these amazing different stories, even though it was called Desi Girls. But then after that, we started narrowing it down. When we do Desi Girls, like the one that's coming up that your husband, Raj, is going to be hosting on May 15th. That one is strictly all South Asian. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give each, community their own night, right? It's like, this is for you. We are just celebrating you. This is all about you. So I think for me, it's just like, it almost feels like I'm always on like the fringe of comedy, but not really kind of given an entrance or an entry point to go enter that kind of, to be like, look, there's a lot of value in this. I can bring this to a bigger audience and show something amazing,
Well, then maybe that's something that is like a conversation that needs to happen this year. And why not this year after everything's stopped? Why
Right.
not use this year as the year to like recalibrate and
Right.
have those conversations?
That's right.
Because it is interesting. It's like, you know, even if you go to a comedy club on a regular Saturday night, you don't want to see white comic after white comic after white comic. It's the
But that's
same
all
point
it
of
is,
view.
though. That's all it is.
Yeah,
Though.
more and more we're requesting like we send someone out and they're booking local posts and features. We'll kind of request, hey, can you like please book someone of color so that it shakes things up and it's not just
Right.
this kind of very bland lineup.
Right. Right.
But I mean, it is important to be having these conversations, and if the industry is lacking or not rising to the occasion,
Right.
then it's time to change that.
Right. So who do I go and have this conversation with, Claire?
Well, this is a good start.
Variety. Who am I talking to?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question.
You know?
I mean, all of the above.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know anybody at Hollywood Reporter Variety. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, where do you go? You know, where do you go to have this conversation? You know what I'm saying? You know, it's like one thing. It's like, look, I busted my ass for the past 6 years, spent my own money, invested my own sweat, blood, and tears, building this amazing brand. But now it's just like, okay, then who do you go and have this conversation with? Who is willing to listen? You know?
Yeah. Well, that is the sort of $1 million question. And if it's too hard to find someone, then how do we change that? So it's no longer hard to find someone to have that conversation with.
Right. I mean, because I think the thing that frustrates me is that people are like, oh my God, Mona, you check so many boxes. And I'm just like, right, you know, and it's not that I don't hustle and go out to networks and talk to them. But, you know, there's always the, oh my God, you are great, but we are looking for this, but. So there's always that thing. And you're just like, I don't understand. What is it that you want from me? Like, I'm bringing you pretty much everything you're looking for.
Right.
So then that's why I was curious about what are the conversations that are happening behind the doors? Like, are they, you know, because at the end of the day, the conversation's about value, right? Dollars and cents. Can you bring home the bacon? Yes, diversity is nice, representation is nice, but can you bring home the bacon? So that's why I'm curious to know from you, what are the kind of conversation, or maybe if you have heard or are you even comfortable talking about that, you know, that agents or, you know, even decision makers sit down and talk about when it comes to this kind of topic?
Yeah, I mean, like I think we kind of touched on it before. It's just like why it's ridiculous to ignore this kind of diversity anymore. It's not something that we can get around, that we should want to get around. Right. The conversation should be, how do we like level the playing field, I guess?
Yes.
Because the other thing too is, like, I think we spoke about this right at the beginning, is like, you know, you check all the boxes, but in comedy, what's the first box? Are you funny?
That's right. I mean, I check that box.
Right. So that should be the number one box, you know? And then if you're a great comic.
Right. I mean, you know, Claire, and that's an interesting point you brought up about being a great comic, right? I mean, when I go to big comedy clubs like your store and your Laugh Factory and all that, and sometimes you see I won't even say sometimes. Oftentimes, I have seen people who are on the lineup, and you're just like, I don't understand. I don't understand why this person is there right now. I literally don't get it. They do not check the funny box, right?
Right.
And I'm just like, is it just me? And then you look at the audience, and the audience is with you also. The audience is like, I don't think this fucking person is funny. This is ridiculous right now, right? Yeah. So then you're just like, wow. Like, look, I love Comedy Store. Minority Report's got its start there. I love that place to pieces, you know? But sometimes when I look at
Emily LaForde at the Comedy Store, who gives women opportunities.
Emily LaForde is great. Emily LaForde is the one who gave me the opportunity of Minority Reports. I love her to pieces. She's great, you know? But then when you look at the lineup, you're just like, there's one white woman on there, and everybody else is a white dude, but maybe one another very famous black comic thrown in, right?
Yeah.
So how do you change that conversation, right? This is the comedy.
Yeah. I mean, that's the economics of it, right? Because I think they're looking at how do we make sure that this club is full every night so that we can continue to operate. And look, I mean, the great thing about comedy, I guess, is it's subjective. So what you find funny, maybe I won't find funny.
Sure.
Someone else might, someone else won't. But when you're seeing these, like, you know, stacked lineups at the Comedy Store and places like that, they're looking at butts in seats.
Right.
So we need to change the conversation. This is like a slight tangent, but it's going to pull in and make sense at the end. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't that long ago before Netflix and social media, and, you know, you would go on the road and you'd have a regional club in, you know, Oklahoma or Texas or something like that, it would just be busy every weekend because they would know there was going to be a good comic there. And they didn't have these big digital marquees, and it was just like, so-and-so's here this weekend, and you would just turn up and hope for a good show and probably get one.
Mm-hmm.
Now with social media, with all these additional ways to get credits, we have these big digital signs outside comedy clubs now, and it's like we trained our audience to turn up and see X comic because of some credit that they have.
Sure.
And it's not necessarily the guys who have done the work and have come up in their hometown from host to feature to starting to headline, and they've moved to LA or New York and worked their asses off in clubs there for years. That training is being lost. So when I say to you, hey, grow a YouTube following, I can book you all day in a club.
Sure.
Of course, because you'll sell tickets. But at the end of the day, if you're not a good comic, people won't come back.
100%.
So there needs to be a balance.
100%.
And we've trained people.
Sure.
Now we've trained audiences to come out and see this comic because they have a Netflix special, or come out and see this comic because they were just on the Tonight Show.
Sure.
And we need to walk it back and be like, hey, come out and see this comic because this is a great club and we only book really funny people.
Mm-hmm.
That needs to go back to that.
Mm-hmm.
So where you just turned up at the Laugh Factory because you knew you were going to have a good night. Where you just turned up at your local, you know, club in Colorado because you knew it was going to be a great night.
But wouldn't you say the genie is kind of out of the bottle at this point? I mean,
probably.
I mean, you can't go back. You can't undo social media at this point, right? That's
no, but there has to be a way we can start having that conversation with audiences again, and just being like, hey, remember, we booked someone because we do this day in and day out, and we know that they're great. So that's why you come to our club. Right. And we've kind of trained audiences to buy tickets based on
credits.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember in 2018, I was at the Improv hanging out on a Wednesday night, and the lab, which is the other room at the Improv, packed. I mean, to the brim, packed. Right? I'm like, ooh, what's going on? Who's headlining? What's happening? And one of the comics who I knew was sitting there at the bar with me. He was like, oh, this guy is a YouTuber. He's a YouTube comedian. And I was like, okay, well, let's see what the YouTube comedian's got to do. So us comics who go and hit the pavement and work our asses off and show up at comedy clubs is watching this YouTube comedian. So he had all these other acts before him who are actual comics who tour and bust their asses at comedy clubs and open mics and stuff. And then the YouTuber who was the headliner went up.
Right.
Claire, I don't think I've ever seen anybody eat a bigger dick on stage than this guy. I just looked at him and I was like, right, because your comedy was made in an editing room. You don't know how to work a room. You don't know how to really even deliver jokes. They're here because they watch your funny videos and then you're here. So when you look at comics like myself, or even comics like, your husband, Raj, and, we have been grinding it out for a while. I've been in this 10 plus years already, right?
Yeah.
Raj has been doing it for, I would say, 15 plus years, right? And then you look at these YouTube comedians, right? And yes, they'll book the rooms out, like you said. Yeah, they have millions of followers, but they fucking suck, right?
Yeah.
But they'll go to another place and they'll pack the room out, and then another, right? Because people don't know that they suck until they show up. And I have a pretty good feeling that when the next time they go on tour, they're going to try to promise that they're good, and people will still come out to see them. So
Yeah.
I guess my question, like, look, I am doing everything I can to grow my YouTube. My YouTube has grown quite exponentially from what it was last year, so I'm very proud of it. You know, my social medias continue to grow, but when somebody's making these kind of videos in editing rooms and then they're putting it out there and getting millions of hits, and then you're not, even though you're going and putting the work, how do I as a comic like compete with that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's not easy, and this sort of environment has been created like this now. Eventually those comics, like, unless they get better really quickly, it doesn't last forever. There's no longevity in that.
Right.
So unless they really then put in, like, go on the road and put in the work and get better. There's also a huge difference between a comic who can, you know, build a YouTube following, move to LA, do 15 minutes at a club, and then do 45 minutes on the road or an hour. Like, that's not the same skill set.
100%.
So that's, I mean, kind of tying in what I was saying before, is that, like, how do we get back to come out and see a comic because they've been booked because they're great,
right?
Rather than there's a way to marry the two and use, because, like, social media, YouTube, or it's your own personal built-in marketing tool, basically.
That's correct.
But yeah, like, the experience that you get from starting at the bottom, working your way up through clubs, hosting, featuring, going on the road, it makes for a better comic.
Sure.
So that is a conversation, and that is something that needs to kind of be bridged.
Right.
So that we're not just giving the opportunities to people who can quickly sell out 300 seats.
Sure. Sure.
You know, quality over, well, quantity or whatever, but yeah.
Claire, are there a lot of female senior agents at CAA?
Yeah.
Like a lot?
Yeah. I think I wouldn't venture to say it's 50-50, but it's probably pretty close too.
Wow. And they're right up there with the dudes, like, making pretty big decisions and making and breaking people's careers.
A lot of female partners, like the head of comedy touring is male, head of comedy is, like, the talent comedy is female. A lot of the people who have just, like, been promoted are all female. It's fairly equal, not quite equal, but it's close.
Right. No, I mean, that makes me happy because, you know, I mean, it's different, right, Claire? Like, you go and talk to your boss or your seniors, and you're like, hey, I have so and so, and, like, you should take a look, right? Because you're also as a female, you're also looking at things a little differently than a male touring agent would,
right?
You know. So you're bringing in that kind of extra element of, like, hey, I'm sure you've never thought about this, but why don't you take a look at this and consider this possibly, you know?
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, whether it's a positive or a negative, or whether it's just neutral, like, having a woman on a team, like on an agent's team, changes the way people look at things, because you just have to be more mindful of the fact that there's a different opinion in the room.
That's right.
So yeah.
What are your ambitions, Claire? What do you want to do?
Well, let's get through this pandemic first. I'm looking forward to the world opening back up and to getting back in the office, and you know, for opportunity coming back for everyone.
Yeah. What I mean, do you ultimately want to be like a big agent? Do you want to be a manager? Do you want to
I
be an
feel
executive
like
producer?
I feel like this is probably it for like the foreseeable future. There's been a lot of, like you said, this especially this past year has been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
I think that we're always going to be this core group now who like made it through the pandemic, and that's going to stick for a really long time.
Right.
Because we have all, and not that our pain is any different or worse or harder to get through than anyone else's, but we've suffered and we've lost and we've, said goodbye to buyers and clients and, had to really invent a whole new way of working in the last 12 months.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's just from our own experience.
Yeah.
So that, I feel like we all had this very weird bond now that we probably didn't have 12 months ago, and probably wouldn't have had we not gone through something like this.
I mean, I think I'm gonna, when I get my shots finally, when I finally get vaccinated, I'm definitely gonna video record it and then put Destiny's Child Survivor song as a background track on it.
It feels like that. It really does feel like that.
I mean, you're like, wow, you survived the pandemic? I can do anything. Like,
I know.
I can conquer the world.
It's just, I mean, everything this year, like, never in a million years would we have thought that we would have experienced what we've all been through.
Right.
And I hope that we don't go back to normal, because whatever normal was, wasn't working.
I agree.
And it's really time to change, to make big changes across not just comedy, not just entertainment, but across like everything.
That's correct.
More women, more diversity. I don't know of a study that shows that being more diverse is a bad thing.
That's right. I mean, I don't know if you know the story about the Fast and the Furious franchise, but when it was dropped, at a studio, the story goes something like, they were like, oh my God, a Fast and the Furious with like, oh my God, a diverse cast, it's not going to make money. Right. And the director is an Asian guy, and he was like, give me an opportunity. Give me an opportunity. Yeah. And Fast and the Furious, how many do they have? They made already 6 or 7 of them. They just keep making them.
Yeah, they're at like 8 or 9, I think now.
Yeah. They just keep making them because time and time again, it has been proven that diversity, there's a lot of money in diversity, right?
And imagine Friends, which is one of the greatest TV shows of all time. But imagine that wouldn't get greenlit now.
That's correct.
6 straight white 20-somethings. No one relates to that anymore.
Right. I mean, you're, I mean, I just feel like, I feel Claire, I guess sitting on this side of the aisle, is that although I'm very happy about the conversations about diversity and representation, but when people like myself step up and actually give people what they want, or networks or whatever, there seems to be still this kind of dwindling thing where if you don't exactly fit in their mold of how they see diversity or representation, then it doesn't matter. And it's like, no, I'm trying to show you something that you haven't seen before. I'm telling you there's value in here, but I feel like that is another barrier. I feel that people like myself still have to kind of break through and be like, no, if you give me an opportunity, I promise you I'll show value to you.
Yeah, well, then that's definitely something that needs to be addressed, I think, as we come into the new world and we come back into some sort of regular life, because I mean, these conversations are good because maybe my version of diversity is different to what you think diversity is.
That's correct.
So the more we talk about this, the easier it is to stop kind of breaking down these walls.
That's right. Claire Armstrong, this was such a great conversation.
Thank you for having me. An hour has flown by.
Hour just flew by. Claire, do you like people to follow you on your Instagram or your social at all? Or
I mean, you're welcome to. I'm at the Claire Armstrong on Instagram, and I post so infrequently you won't even notice that you're following me. So it's totally up to you. If you would like to follow someone who posts like maybe once a week.
Yeah, no, listen, I follow you, so I appreciate you taking the time and coming and chatting with us.
Thank you.
All right, my friend, I will talk to you soon.
See you. You got it.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
That was a lovely Claire Armstrong. I know you guys enjoyed that conversation because I know I definitely enjoyed that conversation and I learned so much. You guys, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do. Go to youtube.com/ my name, Mona Sheikh Comedian. You can also follow me on TikTok and Facebook with the same name. I am also on Instagram and Twitter at Mona's Comedy. Guys, I will be back tomorrow with an amazing new guest. Have a good evening. Stay safe out there. Please wear your masks.